and Single series. My name is Hannah. In today's episode, we will be talking about abuse. The Young and Single series has specially been packaged to teach truths from God's Word to young people grappling through the maze of adolescence and early young adulthood stages. We are excited each time we get to share God's Word, and excited each time we get to share various topics and throw light on these issues which are affecting many young ones. Today we are sharing about abuse. Abuse. When we look at the dictionary from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it says abuse is a corrupt practice or custom. And so I have been abused by my friends. Wrong practice or custom. Many people go through various phases of abuse knowingly and unknowingly. And abuse comes because we grow up in environments with people, not in isolation. And when we lack information and adequate knowledge about situations, we find ourselves being abused. Children are gifted to parents, and parents are the primary caregivers of children. Sadly, many parents have no idea of how they should take care of these children and find themselves abusing these children sometimes. How? Verbally, physically, emotionally, mentally. These various forms of abuse exist, and it's not only from parents, it is from the various people who abuse us daily. Our parents are one, our friends are one, our peers, self, teachers, counselors, and the list goes on and on and on. Think about it. Have you been abused in any way, knowingly or unknowingly? We find ourselves unconsciously as victims of abuse, one way or the other. There are peers who have no idea how to relate to each other. The way they speak to one another, the way they treat one another, the way they beat each other. And abuse comes because the abusers themselves sometimes have no idea they are abusing. And the abusers themselves have been abused and have developed abuse as their coping mechanism. So what do we want to learn today? It's very important to sit and reflect whether you have been abused before or you are an abuser yourself. Are you engaged in a wrong practice or custom, infringing on people, actions via physically, verbally, mentally, emotionally that are wrong or that are detriment to the other person? Now, abuse is very, very endemic and dangerous. It starts sometimes in our childhood stage, when we are young, when we are living with our parents in certain neighborhoods. We find ourselves being scripted in a particular way. A young boy grew up in a family where everybody wakes up in the morning and the greeting is an insult or a four-letter word. They share it freely for each other. And this boy goes to secondary school, and that was how he was speaking to his friends. And everybody got offended, and he didn't understand why. He had been scripted to use foul language, and he didn't know he was becoming abusive. Another young girl grew up in a home where people kept bullying her, so she had learned to defend herself by fighting. That coping mechanism she had developed grew up with her and became her mode of defense for herself. Unknown to her, that mode of defense eventually became her way of life. People found her as abusive and she didn't think she was. Why? Her environment had scripted her. Each one of us, one way or the other, may have been victims of an abusive environment, may have been victims of abuse from our friends, from our teachers, our parents. There's sexual abuse, verbal abuse and insults. There's people look down on people. Somebody look at somebody and says, you look like a monkey. You look like an animal. Somebody says you are too loud. Somebody says you are too timid. Somebody says you are ugly. Somebody says that you don't have a place in our class. All these sentences or statements sound simple and innocent, but they are all various forms of abuse. Dangers of abuse. When people are abused continuously and consistently, different things happen to them. One, they either accept abuse as normal or they end up becoming abusers. Why? Each one of us has inbuilt coping mechanisms. We have what we call ability to cope with situations. Means when you abuse me, I ignore you or I fight back. That defense mechanism to fight back, to have a voice, is what people now can use wrongly. And so if you have the wrong coping mechanisms, consciously and unconsciously, before you know it, you end up as an abuser, or you end up accepting abuse as normal. What do you do if you found yourself growing up in an abusive environment with parents, peers, bullies? One, examine yourself. What are the things you are doing now that is reflective of the abusive environment you grew up in? Have you developed wrong coping mechanisms, or have you become so low self-esteem and very inward looking? Go for counseling, get therapy, get people who are willing to help you to overcome these abusive tendencies. Because if you don't, for the young ones I'm talking to, you end up with a warped personality. You end up being who you are not, who God didn't make you to be. Number two, also learn to understand what is right and wrong. Existing norms are already in place. Existing norms are already in place. So it is up to you to learn, find the right environment to know that this behavior is wrong and this is wrong. Also, it is important to get healing when you realize you have been abused one way or the other. You've grown up in a very insulting environment and you look down on yourself. Get healing. One good thing the Bible teaches us is Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted. And so when we talk of the Greek word heal, apesi, which means to set free or to loose from the detrimental effect of a shattered life, it is so important to realize that that abuse has shattered your life, changed who you are, and making you act wrongly, either accepting abuse or becoming an abuser. Go to Jesus and tell him that your life has been messed up one way or the other, by your parents, by your friends, by your siblings, by your pastors, by your teachers, by society. And when you are truthful, he will also release healing unto you. We all need healing, don't we? We may have innocently abused people, haven't we? We may also have been victims of abuse. Forgive those who have abused you, because if you don't, you would be stagnated. Finally, but not the least, grow up. You learn new habits and you drop the old ones that you may have picked as a result of those abusive tendencies. Abuse is on the rise, and many people these days are speaking up against it. I forgot to mention, speak up, speak up, speak up. Many young ones suffer abuse and never speak up. They never tell their parents, they never tell their friends. They are sexually abused, they are verbally abused, they are being harassed. Speak up, learn to speak up. Confide in somebody who will help you handle that, so that your personality and your uniqueness is not lost. I believe you've learned something today. Today's session is intended to make you think deeply. Thank you for joining me. My name is Hannah. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe in case you haven't. God bless you.